3 days. No contact. Just silence. And then, the gut-punching reality hit me: my wife was hiding something far worse than I could ever imagine. My wife of 17 years has basically vanished for the past 3 days, and I'm feeling completely lost. I'm just looking for some sort of insight or advice here. My wife, she's 39, and I'm 40. We've been married for 17 years, as I mentioned, and we have 3 daughters, ages 15, 13, and 11. We were high school sweethearts, been together for about 23 years now. I don't know much at this point, but here's what little I do know. 3 days ago, my wife came home from work. She had to work the 4th, so she came in looking frantic and emotional. She quickly packed an overnight bag and took off. I only know about this because our oldest daughter was home at the time and saw the whole thing. She tried to talk to her mom, but all she got was crying and panic. My wife didn't say a word and just rushed out the door. Now, she's not answering any of our texts or calls. I reached out to her parents immediately, and after a while, they finally got back to me, saying she's safe with them and asking me to please be patient and understanding. And that's all they told me. I tried calling her sister, her brother, and one of her close friends from work. Her brother said he didn't know anything, and her friend mentioned she was at work that morning but disappeared around lunchtime 3 days ago. That's all anyone seems to know. And now here we are, 3 days in, with no contact from my wife, not even to the kids. Nobody is telling us a thing. I'm here, trying to hold things together for my 3 girls. They keep asking me what's going on, what happened to mom, and all I can say is that she's at grandma and grandpa's and that we're supposed to be patient and understanding. I've got this overwhelming urge to just pack up the kids, jump in the car, and head straight over there without warning. It's only about a 3-hour drive, and sitting here in this limbo is unbearable. The kids think we had some huge fight and that we're headed for divorce, but that's so far from the truth. We don't fight, never have, and the kids know that. I'm at a complete loss here. Can someone give me some sort of logical perspective on this? Because right now, my emotions are running wild, and I'm just spinning in circles trying to keep everything together. If someone had passed away, wouldn't the spouse or family be the first to know? Maybe she's dealing with some past trauma that resurfaced, but still, I'd be the first person she'd turn to for support if that were the case. We're in the dark over here, and nothing about this makes sense. I don't know what to do, and I'm just sitting here with the girls in this awful limbo. We know nothing, and no one is telling us anything. I'm worried, scared, angry, every emotion you can think of in this kind of situation. Can anyone come up with a reasonable explanation? Why would she ghost her family like this? Update: you were all right, it was an affair. I'm not too familiar with Reddit, so I'm not sure how to link my previous post here. It was a really long night. I didn't get any sleep, so forgive me if this update is a bit short. I don't plan on spending much time on the computer today, but I did read all the comments yesterday and late into the night. I'll eventually get through the responses today. I'll just lay out what I know. My FIO didn't call me back last night, so I ended up contacting the police. They did a wellness check, just as many of you suggested. That caused a storm of problems that I won't dive into right now, but it turns out my wife has been having an affair for at least 2 years, maybe even longer. Everyone was right. The other man apparently had a heart attack on Tuesday and passed away that same night. From what I've gathered, it sounds like both my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law knew about it and were covering for her. Still, no word from my wife, not to me, not to the kids. I'm trying to keep this information from the girls for now. Honestly, I have no clue what to do from here. That's all I know, and it's more than enough to just about destroy me. I appreciate all the help and advice so far. I'm not sure how to move forward from this, but that's it. If you're the praying type, I'd appreciate some prayers for me and the girls. Update: the depression and the anger. I was pointed toward this forum by a few others and just joined recently. I've been scrolling through a lot of the posts here when I get a moment, mostly late at night after the chaos of the day settles. But of course, that's when my mind kicks into overdrive, dragging me through bouts of depression. Then I swing to full-blown rage, and sometimes both emotions hit at once. Sleep is almost impossible. I spend my days wandering around like a zombie. I'm still trying to figure out all these acronyms. I guess my D-Day was last Friday. Initially, I thought my wife's affair lasted around 2 years, but now I'm starting to believe it went on much longer. The man she cheated with, the so-called AP, was someone she's known for a long time. His sudden death from a heart attack set off this chain of events that exposed the truth. I'm still searching for more information, with my oldest daughter helping me piece things together. There's so much I'm not ready to put out there yet. Honestly, I didn't plan on posting more about my situation, but so many people have reached out with support and advice that it's starting to feel a bit therapeutic. It's heartbreaking to know so many others have been through or are going through this kind of pain. For that, I'm deeply sorry. I met with 2 lawyers, one yesterday, one today, to go over my options. I've also reached out to a few therapy centers, but in my area, the wait times are extremely long. I'm trying to follow the advice so many of you have given, avoiding alcohol, though I've never been a drinker anyway, focusing on self-care, working out, and so on. I consider myself to be in pretty good shape for my age, but right now, finding the energy to exercise feels impossible. I know some of you are going to ask for more details, the who, what, when, why, but I'm just not in a place to dive into all of that right now. Every day feels like another bomb has gone off, and I'm just hoping for some advice that might help me sleep a little. The title of my post says it all: my wife was my everything. She was my best friend since high school, the mother of my 3 beautiful daughters. We had our own inside jokes, even secret handshakes. And now, it's all just gone. Everything. I think back on our years together, every milestone, every laugh, and I feel this deep, suffocating sadness. It's like none of it ever meant anything to her. And then I get angry, furiously angry, thinking, how could you? I end up screaming into my pillow, punching the mattress until my arms give out. It's a vicious cycle. The only sleep I get is when I finally pass out from sheer exhaustion, but even then, I wake up suddenly, and the whole mental torment starts over. Any strength I have, I pour into my daughters. They've been stepping up, trying to take care of me like they're the parents. It's not fair to them, and I know it. How did any of you manage to sleep after finding out about an affair? How do you deal with the silence, the emptiness, when it's just you and your thoughts in the middle of the night? I've come to realize that, aside from taking care of my girls, getting some sleep has to be my number 1 priority. But I just can't seem to manage it. So, I'm hoping you all might have some advice that could help. Thank you. Update: surprise visit from my wayward wife's parents. Sorry if this is a bit scattered, I'm still pretty new to Reddit, and I'm not sure how much of my story I need to repeat. It's been a little over a week since my D-Day. Since then, I've learned that my wife's affair lasted well over 4 years, though I still don't have an exact timeline. It's likely it started off as an emotional affair before turning physical. I keep wondering how the pandemic and lockdowns might have factored into all of this. There are so many questions I have, and I'm not sure I'll ever get all the answers. Anyway, yesterday, my in-laws showed up unexpectedly to visit their grandkids. My wife has been staying with them since this whole nightmare kicked off, which, honestly, is a total load of nonsense. They spent about 15 minutes greeting our daughters, we have 3 girls, before asking to speak with me in private. As you might imagine, it was a long conversation, one I don't want to go into every detail of here. But to cut a long story short, my wife wants to come back home, though she's terrified of facing the consequences of what she's done. Her parents also pushed pretty hard to find out if I was planning to go through with a divorce. They spent a good chunk of time trying to convince me to forgive her and attempt to rebuild our marriage. It was clear they were both deeply ashamed and embarrassed, but it was also obvious that they wanted her out of their house. Despite everything, it was a civil and respectful exchange. I'll admit, I lied and told them I wasn't sure what my plans were because I fully intend to divorce. But I feel like if I reveal that now, I'll never get the full truth from my wife. And maybe I won't get it anyway, but I need her to sit down in front of me and explain everything if it's possible. After 17 years of marriage, being together since high school, raising 3 kids, sharing countless memories, I want her to look me in the eye and tell me everything. I also want my daughters to know that I gave her a chance to explain herself, that I offered her the opportunity to apologize and that we handled things as mature adults. I keep trying to choose the path that sets the best example for my kids. I don't know, maybe I'm going about this all wrong. Legally, I can't keep her out of the house, my lawyer made that very clear. So, if she decides to come back, I can't stop her, even though I absolutely don't want that right now. My girls and I have actually started to settle into a pretty decent routine. So, I made a demand that I figured might be tough for her to meet anytime soon. I told them she could come home if she sat down with me in person, looked me in the eyes, and told me everything about her affair, from start to finish, answering every question I have without holding anything back or lying. Then, she'd have to sit down with the girls, apologize in person, and answer any questions they might have, too. I mean, they already know what's happened, so it's only fair, right? Now, she can legally come home whenever she wants, and she doesn't have to meet any demands I set. But if she's scared to face us, maybe I can use that to buy some more time. Does that make me a bad person? I'm not trying to be sneaky or deceitful here, I just really don't want to start living under the same roof yet if I can help it. Plus, our state has a mandatory 90-day waiting period before a divorce can be finalized, anyway. Her coming back home is inevitable. We'll both have to return to work at some point, and life will keep moving forward, regardless of this mess. I just want to stretch this out as long as I can so I can get my head straight and be in a better place mentally and emotionally. Lately, she's been texting the girls. She keeps saying she doesn't want a divorce and repeatedly apologizes to them. The girls have shown me the texts. She's also asking about me every day, and it looks like the reality of what she's done to all of us is really hitting her hard, especially over the past few days. So, how do I handle all of this? Was my demand unreasonable? It sounds like she's going to be coming home sooner rather than later. Still, I feel confident in my path forward right now. I'm not shaken by it because I knew this was bound to happen at some point. I just want to make the best possible decision for my daughters and, eventually, for myself as we move on. Thank you to each and every one of you who has offered support, advice, and words of encouragement. Update: wayward wife finally came home. I asked for a divorce. This might be a bit anticlimactic, but I apologize for the length, I just need to get this off my chest. It was a terrible weekend, but my wife came back home yesterday. There was quite a bit of build-up as the week progressed. Every other time she'd come through the front door, I would greet her with a hug and a kiss, but this time, the tension between us was almost unbearable. She actually walked up to me and tried to give me a hug before saying anything, but I turned away. Unreal. It was as if nothing had ever happened. Once she settled in, I naturally asked her to tell me everything. And, once again, she insisted that she wasn't ready. We had spoken over the phone earlier in the week, and I got the same response then. I made it clear that the only condition for her moving back in was that she loved this family enough to explain why she had disappeared for nearly 3 weeks. But she just repeated that she couldn't do it yet. It took every ounce of restraint I had not to start yelling at her. I took a few deep breaths, trying to keep my composure, but I failed. After the first of many long pauses, I just blurted it all out. I told her she had been having an affair for over 4 years with that coworker of hers, that she had planned to leave me for this other guy, ghosted her entire family, and now she walked through the door without fulfilling the one simple condition I had asked for. And then, I said I wanted a divorce. This is when things got strange. Her body language and facial expression made it obvious that she had no idea how much I actually knew about the affair. She looked at me with wide eyes, then just stood there in the kitchen, staring down at the floor. She didn't say a word. Just stood there, stoic. I was bracing myself for anything, everything, but not this. I expected an emotional meltdown, maybe a tearful confession, or even for her to start yelling at me, blaming the affair on me. Maybe a serious-toned, "Okay, let's sit down and talk this through." But I wasn't prepared for nothing. We must have stood there in the kitchen for a solid 5 minutes, both of us in complete silence. It was one of the strangest moments of my life. She clearly didn't know what to say, and neither did I. I had read through all your comments and advice, I even took notes and practiced in front of a mirror, preparing myself for every possible outcome this confrontation might have. Every outcome except this one. So, right then and there, I made the decision to lay out everything I knew about her affair. Maybe it was a dumb move. I started telling her everything I'd pieced together, even throwing in my own assumptions about certain things, how she met the guy, her sister's involvement, what might have happened during COVID, and so on. The whole time, she just stared at the floor. As I went on, I got angrier because she still wasn't saying a word. I did my best not to raise my voice or say anything obscene. After what felt like an eternity, I finally managed to compose myself. Then there was another long, awkward silence. That's when my anger turned into sadness as the reality of everything hit me. I softly asked her what I had done to push her away, if she ever truly loved me, and if he was worth it. Still, she said nothing. She didn't move or react. No tears, no apology, no shouting, no explanation. She just stood there, head down. Nothing. That cut deep. Maybe even more than D-Day itself. I stood there, staring at her, frozen. I don't know how long I would have stayed there, but, of course, things got worse. Turns out, our daughters had been eavesdropping on the entire confrontation. I can't believe how stupid I was. I had spent so much energy focusing on their well-being these past few weeks, putting them first, but I got emotional and completely forgot to consider where they were when I confronted my wife. So, our oldest daughter came storming down the stairs, unleashing all the pent-up anger she'd been holding in. My wife just ran upstairs and locked herself in the bedroom. That's where we're at now. I heard her crying most of the night until I finally managed to fall asleep. Only our youngest has made any attempt to talk to her. The rest of us have been keeping our distance. If I can find the courage, I'm going to suggest that she stay with her sister until we can finalize the divorce. But this is her home too, so I know I can't force it. It's going to be pure misery if we all have to keep living together under the same roof. I was wrong about my wife, and you all were right. I was wrong about everything, all the years we spent together, every memory, and every significant moment we shared. I truly believed she'd break down, beg for forgiveness, that she'd spill the truth to unburden herself of the guilt from the past 4 years. This is the same woman who once drove all the way back to a farmer's market because she'd been given $10 too much in change, but somehow, we're not worth that effort. I'm not worth it. Maybe I never was. So now what? Today was beyond uncomfortable at home. The girls and I tried to carry on with the routine we've built over the last 2 weeks, but obviously, things have changed. I just want to fast forward through all of this, the divorce, the awkward conversations, the arguments, and the drama. For those of you who have had to live with a wayward spouse, especially with kids involved, how did you handle it? I know this is just the beginning of the struggle. I keep reading posts that promise it will get better, but I feel so far from that place right now. There isn't a single moment when I don't want to scream SOB. I'm trying so hard to keep a stable mind for my daughters, but I'm not sure if I can keep it up for the next 3 months. School will start well before all of this mess is over. I guess this is my life now. Thank you all for caring and offering support. I don't know if the worst is behind us or still to come, but I truly appreciate any help you can give to get me through the next phase. Update, moment of weakness, and I finally lost it. I'm in a rough place and have been ever since my wife came back and I found out about the affair. I've been trying to fake it as best I can for my daughters. I try to say the right things, think the right things, but tonight I have to admit the truth. Like many of you say, the pain comes in waves, and tonight I was hit with a big one. I lost my composure a bit. The divorce has been filed, but my wife still hasn't hired a lawyer. I've been trying to be as patient and delicate as possible, hoping we can manage an uncontested divorce that we handle mostly on our own. But after tonight, I'm not so sure. We've been cohabitating during the week, and on Friday nights, she heads to her sister's place and doesn't come back until Sunday evening. It's not ideal, but her job is close to our home, while her sister lives an hour away if traffic is clear. The past couple of weeks have been a routine of mostly avoiding each other, with the girls and I trying to maintain some sense of normalcy while she keeps to herself. We have small, casual interactions in the evenings, but nothing more. Except that my oldest daughter and my wife aren't speaking after a couple of nasty blow-ups, and honestly, it's probably for the best right now. Recently, I've been following a lot of the advice I've read from you all and elsewhere. I've been working hard on self-discipline around her, and though it takes every ounce of strength I have, I've been keeping things short and indifferent when we talk, always polite and respectful, though. That was until tonight. The last couple of Fridays, she's come home from work, grabbed a few things, and headed straight to her sister's for the weekend before I even made it back from my job. But not tonight. Tonight, she was waiting for me in the kitchen when I walked through the door. I tried to just pass by her, but she gently grabbed my hand and asked if this was how I planned to treat her just because she wasn't ready to talk about her affair. And that, by the way, was the first time she had even mentioned her cheating since everything blew up almost a month ago. I tried. I really did. I tried to just hold my tongue and walk away. But our daughters weren't home, and I felt this rage building up inside me. Then I let it all out, every ounce of pain, every bit of anger, every hurt, every ache, all the misery. I poured it all onto her. I can't even say how long I went on, I completely lost track of time. I raised my voice, got a bit loud, and probably more animated than I should have. I just broke down and laid bare how shattered I am, the agony I feel every single day. Everything I've been keeping bottled up, everything that's been tearing me apart. I could easily turn this post into 4,000 words if I tried to recount every word I said. But once I started, there was no stopping me. Of course, I cried. Got emotional. And now, I'm so damn angry at myself for it. I'd been doing so well. Damn it. I let her get to me. I knew it was coming, it's been building up for a while now, and there's only so much I can unload in the weight room. For the first time, though, my wife actually broke down too. She started sobbing uncontrollably, which, I have to admit, brought me a twisted sense of satisfaction. It made me almost happy to see her hurting the way I was. I wish I didn't care, but there was something satisfying in finally seeing her crack, like there might actually be someone in there who feels a shred of compassion. Surprisingly, she was mumbling apologies the whole time I was going off on her. She just kept ugly crying, and the only thing she could manage to say was, "I'm so sorry." In the end, I left the kitchen before she could pull herself together enough to say anything else. I told her to leave me alone. And that was that. She stayed in the kitchen for a while before eventually leaving for her sister's house again. The girls came home about half an hour later, and they could tell something had gone down. It's hard to hide, but I wasn't ready to discuss it with them, and honestly, I don't think they need to know. The two younger ones have been doing a lot better lately, and I don't want to set back their progress. And telling my oldest would just add more fuel to her anger, which I'd rather avoid. I hate this. I hate it so much. I should have kept it together. I should have just given her the cold shoulder and walked right past. But now that I think about it, it feels like she might have been trying to start a conversation about her affair, just didn't know how to approach it, and then it all went sideways when I lost my cool. Lately, I've actually started to worry about her. I know some of you will probably criticize me for this, but I don't want her to end up hurting herself. She's been isolated, alone with her thoughts, with almost everyone turning their back on her. Sure, you can say she deserves it, and you'd be right, but at the end of the day, she's still a human being and the mother of my children. This feels like such a setback for me. I'm really disappointed in myself. Sorry for another long rant. I called my brother and vented to him too. Guess I'll have to pick up the pieces and try again on Monday. I'm only human. It actually felt good to unload on her, but now the regret is creeping in. Should I text her or just let it be? I'm such a mess, but thanks for listening. Thanks for giving me the support I need to make it through all of this. And thank you all for the advice. Amid all this chaos, we've started therapy, so that's something, I guess. But it's still incredibly difficult. Just so unbelievably hard. Update, it's been an awful week. I know many of you have reached out to check on me, and I truly appreciate the concern. Most of you were right, things haven't been great, and I've barely had a moment to get online. I thought about taking a break from the internet entirely, but this week has set me back horribly. It's been nothing short of awful. My wife hasn't really left me alone all week. She's been overly nice, apologizing non-stop for the affair, and smothering me with her presence. She knocks on my door every night, wanting to talk. I've ignored her some, but there were times I'd engage when I felt up to it. On Wednesday night, I finally snapped and told her to leave me alone. Then, last night, it happened. It's been just over a month since my soon-to-be ex-wife came back after the affair blew up. Now, as we've settled into this uncomfortable cohabitation, she came into my room after the girls had gone to bed, asking to talk privately, different from how she'd been approaching me all week. At first, I refused, but eventually, I agreed. We went out to the garage and sat in my car, trying to avoid another confrontation in front of the kids. This is going to be long, so I apologize in advance. She ended up telling me everything. According to her, we were out there for almost 3 hours. I'm not sure how much I should share. I was up all night, listening to her sobbing for hours. I couldn't sleep. I cried too, then I'd get angry, feeling the urge to go in and scream at her, then I'd cry again. It was just a cycle of rage and sorrow. Forgive me if I take a day or two to respond to anyone. I need to get this off my chest first and then try to sleep. It doesn't help that my wife has been apologizing and begging for another chance all evening tonight, too. I had to leave the house for a few hours just to clear my head. Being around her is just so painful. Anyway, as she explained, she was introduced to her affair partner by her sister well before COVID, about 5 years ago. Apparently, there were zero romantic intentions at first. He was a higher-up at a company she wanted to work for, and he helped her get in. So, her decision to change jobs wasn't directly tied to the affair, but of course, after she got the job, the situation provided extra incentive. Once she started working there, he began flirting with her. It began with texting, then photos, and more texting, and finally turned physical right before COVID hit. She admitted she confessed to her sister at that time and wanted to come clean to me but ultimately decided to bury it and say nothing. Naturally, she claimed she went no contact with him soon after that, but as lockdowns and restrictions eased, he reached out again, and she resumed talking to him. Things became physical once more when businesses reopened. She says she tried to end the affair a couple of times out of guilt but kept going back, so in reality, it never really ended. She went into a lot of detail, even bringing a 5-page packet of handwritten notes that outlined the entire affair timeline. She read it all to me, answering my questions along the way. She lied about weekend trips with the girls, work travel, traffic jams, issues with her parents, shopping trips, you name it. All the lies I had suspected. And there were so many. I had trusted her every word, never questioning anything, but it was all just a cover to be with him. Hearing her confession made me feel even worse. Everyone was right about that. But what throws me off is that her affection never really faded while this was happening. She never grew distant like I've read about in so many similar stories. Our intimacy did change, but not enough for me to notice any major red flags. Anyway, she admitted that she fell in love with him and wanted a life with him. He was older, divorced, single, and promised her lavish gifts, vacations, and a life where he could shower her with everything she desired. She started fantasizing about leaving her responsibilities behind, claiming the thrill of being with him was just too intoxicating to resist. She confessed how bored she'd become with the daily grind of family life. She was incredibly open, very emotional, and seemed honest. Halfway through, I lost it. I broke down and cried. Hearing it all hurt more than I can put into words. And, of course, once she was done confessing, she told me how much she loves me and always has, saying she's willing to do anything and everything to save our marriage. A lot of you called this one, but to me, it all felt so insincere, almost rehearsed. I've been with this woman for more than half my life, and I can usually tell when she's feeding me a line. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it doesn't even matter anymore. I managed to keep my composure better than I did last week, though. I still got angry and said some things I probably shouldn't have, including a jab about how her lover was involved with multiple women and she was just another fling he was willing to toss aside. That really seemed to get under her skin. A million things had run through my head when I imagined this moment, when she'd finally confess. I'd thought of all the one-liners I might throw at her, the words I could use to cut deep. Hundreds of responses I wish I could have delivered in that emotional moment the other night. But there was one question I knew I had to ask: if he were still alive and she had to choose between him and me, who would she pick? She hesitated, then muttered, "That's not fair." I pressed her on it, and eventually, she said she'd, of course, choose me. My response? Her hesitation was exactly why I was divorcing her, because it showed she was still lying. She started sobbing again, and that was the last thing she said. We sat there in the car for a while, her just crying, but I was exhausted. So I told her that we're divorcing, and for the sake of our daughters, we need to be civil, to be good parents, and be present in their lives. I also added that after all the pain she put me through, I hoped she'd be decent enough to go through with the divorce fairly and amicably. That would be the proof she actually ever loved me. The last thing I said, I borrowed from something I read online. I'm not a petty person, and I didn't intend to hurt her. It just felt like the right ending to everything. And I meant every word. I leaned over, kissed her on the forehead, and told her that I would have loved her forever. Then I got out of the car and went to bed. That was it. As you'd expect, I didn't sleep that night, and here I am again, unable to sleep tonight either. I don't know what happens now. Her opportunity to contest the divorce has come and gone, so I guess that's one small relief, but I haven't spoken to my lawyer yet. I find myself crying all over again, slipping back into those waves of depression and anger. Hearing everything last night was incredibly hard, and honestly, I could have done without all the details. She could have lied or made up half of it, who really knows? But it seemed to fit perfectly with everything I had pieced together over the past month. So that's where things stand for now. It feels like this ordeal will never end. I'll have a few good days, start feeling strong again, and then something else happens, pulling me back down. It's strange, it feels like it's been months, yet only days at the same time. I'm going to try and get some sleep. Imagine the love of your life, the only woman you've ever loved, the only one you've ever kissed, tells you she cheated on you for over 4 years because she was simply bored. Not because she fell out of love, not because we grew apart, not because of any relationship issues or a lack of intimacy. Just boredom. I can't even tell if that makes it worse or better. Thanks for reading and for helping me along this journey. It's been a rough couple of nights. Really bad ones. I promise I'll make an effort to respond tomorrow once I get some sleep. Just getting out of bed in the morning takes everything I have. So many of you have reached out to support me over the past weeks, strangers helping a stranger like me. I truly appreciate it all, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to respond. I've been trying to avoid social media lately. It's been a whirlwind of well wishes, regrets, sadness, and even some hate from a select few. But now, suddenly, it's just silence. The house is so quiet. The reality of these past few months has hit me like a ton of bricks. I feel like Andy Dufresne from The Shawshank Redemption, just standing in the path of a tornado, waiting for the storm to finally pass. I know it's just a movie, but that's exactly what life feels like right now. There's no joy, no hope, nothing left but this huge, gaping hole where my soul used to be. I've been trying so hard to put on a brave face for my girls since I found out about my wife's affair, then enduring those painful weeks of cohabitating and the heart-wrenching talks that followed. And now, just like that, she's gone, and I find I can't keep up the strong front anymore. Getting out of bed in the morning feels like a monumental task, but I know I have to keep pushing forward for the sake of my daughters. So I do. I replay our last conversation in my head like a horror movie, regretting every word, wishing I could go back and say something different, anything else. The last thing I told her was that I loved her and always would, but that I wished I'd never have to see her again. I was hurting, feeling vulnerable, just trying to be honest. I was so tired of having the same conversation over and over, tired of her desperation and apologies. I was just exhausted. And now, life, in some cruel twist of fate, has granted that wish. Given that they'll be without their mother for the foreseeable future, I guess my daughters are holding up okay. My oldest has been taking care of me, making sure I eat, and spending weekends watching movies with me. I'm beyond grateful for her. The other two girls have sort of gone back to their usual routines, with school, sports, and all that. I'm really thankful for that, too. My mom and brother have been an enormous help. But every single day feels like an uphill battle. We're all in therapy now. The girls seem to enjoy it, which I'm glad for. As for me, I just can't seem to buy into it. There's too much guilt, too much sadness. It's overwhelming. I only go because my oldest insists on it. I'm a Christian, and I've been reading the book of Job, trying to stay strong in my faith through all of this, but honestly, I'm failing at that, too. I want to scream, it's not fair, 1,000 times over. I thought I was a good husband, a good father. I thought I treated people right, that I was a moral man. But now, I've been dealt this awful hand, and I just can't seem to climb out of this pit of despair. I feel weak, pathetic, sorry for myself, and so incredibly empty inside. Life isn't fair. Life is hard. I get that. I'm just not sure I have the strength to weather this storm anymore. What do you all do when you're at your very lowest point?